For this book report, of the plethora of books that Monsieur let me choose from, I chose The Devil and His Boy, a book by Anthony Horowitz. So the book cover that I got was this, but then I also looked up this, and this, and this, and also this. So they all represent a different aspect of the story, and I was very proud of that. Settings. So this book takes place in 1593. So there are many like old-timey settings, Framlingham per se, or London, Paul's Walk, Mall's House, which doesn't exist of these many settings, the Red Lion, which is actually a pub in London, Buckingham Palace, and the Garden Players ship. That actually doesn't exist either. So, my characters. Tom Falconer, we're introduced to him as this slave boy who hasn't, like, who hasn't experienced freedom yet, or he hasn't experienced, like, the outside world. He's always been in his little cove in Framlingham, under the ownership of Sebastian and Henrietta Slope. William Hawkins appears, and he is a gentleman's pensioner, basically the Queen's bodyguards. So, that's that. Gamaliel Ratsey, he's a real character in history, and in this book, he was a highwayman and he was a thief basically, but he used to be a soldier. James Grimley does not exist. Okay, Mary Frith, Moll Cutpurse, Mal Cutpurse, Tom Falconer, and the Roaring Girl. These are all real nicknames of a person in real life, and they all represent a different aspect of her actual life. And funny thing is, our main character, Tom Falconer's name derived from a nickname of Moll Cutpurse. We also have William Shakespeare, Dr. Mobius, who does not exist, Florian Mobius, who also does not exist, and that's Dr. Mobius' nephew, and Queen Elizabeth I. So what happens in the story is we're introduced to Tom Falconer as a slave, but it's not really a slave because he isn't, he gets his share of food, but he is under an intense order of, you do this and I'll give you these scraps of food that I ate for dinner. William Hawkins appears as a gentleman's pensioner and tries to take Tom back to London so that the Queen can examine or meet this person. So that doesn't actually happen because Gamaliel Ratsey assassinates him, and he does not make it, but Tom does make it on his horse. Now, Tom is brought to England and introduced to the art of playwriting and plays in the form of, he goes to the Red Lion and he sees a play being performed in the pub. He's also introduced to Moll Cutpurse as she's stealing purses and money and wallets from the audience in the play. He also finds out about auditions because of this play for a certain Will Shakespeare's play for Romeo and Juliet. But he isn't taken in because there's no more girl parts. Tom is invited to the Garden Players' Garduna ship to practice his part of a play that he's been introduced to as The Devil and His Boy. On the ship he meets Dr. Mobius and Florian Mobius, who are an uncle and nephew, but they don't really get along. It's sort of a distant, harsh relationship. He's also introduced to Dr. Mobius' strange friend, who comes almost every night to talk to him in a strange cloaked hood, and he kind of looks like a monk, so that's what Tom identified him as. Tom figures out at the moment that the Garduna are performing in the Queen's palace that the Garduna are actually trying to murder the Queen because they have this lifetime love-hate relationship for each other, because the Garduna are this, it's basically the Illuminati of England. There you go. So, for their play, they need muskets. So, to pass through the safety inspection that the gentlemen's pensioners give, they put a wooden staff or a wooden pole onto the musket barrel. But they put a metal hollow pole onto the devil's pitchfork that they also use in the play. What they intend to do is they intend to take off the metal pole, from the pitchfork, and they intend to put it on the musket and then shoot the queen. But nobody knows that except for Tom after he sees this layout of all the props before the play. So right before the scene where Dr. Mobius is going to shoot Elizabeth I, he jumps out and tackles her. And this, as you may know, all right, and the way I said it, it seems like he tried to hurt the queen, but he actually dodged 3 bullets from Dr. Mobius. So afterwards, he was actually faced with the noose. Not because of the bullets, not because he jumped in front of the queen to save her, but because he actually jumped in front of the queen. Anyways, so Moll finds out that Tom is going to be hanged, and she knows everybody. She knows everyone in the city, no matter if they just came or were here for 50 years. Now, she goes to Gamaliel Ratsey, and she says, "Your friend's in trouble." What friend? Right. "Your friend's in trouble, and you need to go and save him. So why don't you just come with me?" And they go to the Queen's palace, and they talk to this man called Moorfield, who's in charge of hangings, etc. So they talk, and they actually get Tom out of there and into a hospital where they remove his bullets and fix his wounds, and everything is happy-go-lucky. But the Queen arrives, and knowledge is dropped. Tom finds out that he's actually the Queen's grandson. Yeah, so that's pretty tough knowledge for this little 12-year-old who's never experienced freedom in his life before his first 12 years. So he doesn't want to go to royalty, though. He wants to continue his love of plays. So he goes to William Shakespeare. He asks the Queen for permission to go to William Shakespeare and ask for permission to star in a play. So he is accepted, and then everything is lovey-dovey, happy-go-lucky. I decided to do my character analysis on Moll Cutpurse. So the 3 character traits that I decided to give her was cunning, popular, and thoughtful. What have you done? There we go. Okay, so Moll is cunning because she uses all her knowledge to her advantage. She knows everybody in London. She knows all the streets. She knows all the beggars, all the pickpockets, all the people who are trying to chop off Tom's legs. Now, no, I'm serious. If you read the book, that's going to be an inside joke that you get. Moll is cunning because she uses this knowledge to her advantage. She finds out that Tom is actually going to have his legs chopped off by James Grimley, which we talked about earlier. And so she saves him with the knowledge that he's going to help her. Moll is popular because, as I said twice, that she knows everyone and everyone knows her. On my perspective, I think that's not a good idea that everyone knows you, but it's also a good idea to know everyone. Moll is thoughtful because even though Tom tried to rat her out at the Red Lion for pickpocketing, she actually gives him a home and a place to stay and a place to go for his career in London. Historical aspects. This is a big part of the book, and I really like Anthony Horowitz's introduction of historical places like the Red Lion, Framlingham, Paul's Walk, London. Also, Moll Cutpurse, who has like this really jaunty, sort of sarcastic vibe. Gamaliel Ratsey, who is a big figure in history, and Will Shakespeare, who actively teaches Tom about his plays. Funny thing is, I learned that Romeo and Juliet was actually published in 1591. The book takes place in 1593. When Tom meets Shakespeare, Shakespeare introduces himself. "Hello, good sir. My name is Will Shakespeare," or Bill Shakespeare, or Will if you prefer. So arises the question for Tom, is that with a B or not a B? Which inspires Hamlet's golden line, "to be or not to be," which was published in, when was it? 1599, after the events of this book. So, this book online was given 3.5 stars, and I have no idea why. I honestly don't. I would give it 4 and 19 out of 21 pixels, very specific. I would recommend this. I'm joking. I would give it 5 stars. I love the author's insertions of historical aspects and historical characters and giving them this vibe that they also had in historical times. I'd recommend this to these 5 people specifically. I'd recommend it to Owen and Jose because they read Stormbreaker and Anthony Horowitz's other books for Alex Rider, and they thoroughly enjoyed it as far as I know. I'd give it to Sophie because she liked Hogwarts in Harry Potter, and this is very reminiscent of that old-timesy feel. I'd give it to Alia because there's a lot of, again, historical aspects, and I'd give it to Adeline because she enjoyed The Terrible Two, which sort of like lays out a plot and then brings it all together at the end. Yep. And my name's up there. Yes. And that concludes my book report.